To be loved, feelings must be rationed. To love, the doors of hysteria, fantasy and madness may be flung open.
Ooh, I tell you what, ladies and gents, if you can guess where that quote comes from and who said it, if you know that reference, I will be dead impressed.
Answers on a postcard, please. Roll the titles.
Every man lives, not every man truly dies. I must feed from the depths of
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome once again to our semi-regular expanded look into the entirety of the worlds of Games Workshop. When I say when I say semolina, I say to you, nay. Oh my God, we're hitting the anvil as hard as we can.
Absolutely, it's already begun. Oh my God, we're descending into gibbering madness, and we haven't even started talking about anything chaos related yet.
As a one man once said, a wise man once said, a great man once said, it has begun.
Absolutely, and this is how it always happens, isn't it, ladies and gents? This is how it always happens. We will gibber and we will witter, and eventually we will, I promise, start talking about something specific, but not for a while yet.
No. So, as always, I am Adam and Gruffy, and I will try to keep the doors open so madness and reality intermesh. And to help me in that fiendish task, it's George.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm already well on my way to doing that. I mean, that's entirely my ambition in being, to be perfectly honest, to rip open your tiny little minds and let all of the insanity and darkness and filth of your own subconsciousnesses spill through.
Hang on just one tickety-boo. Something's just appeared in my brain and I've just realised something.
That's because I'm clawing at its doors. That's because I'm ripping open its seams, Adam. There's going to be all sorts spilling through. Of course there is.
Are you Sutter Kane?
I won't say no. And I won't say yes. I very well could be. In some other form or in some other reality or state of being. I would aspire to be Sutter Kane.
It is John Carpenter's In the Mouth of Madness, actually based on your life story, you know.
Every conversation with me, every interaction is very much like watching that film.
What? Fantastic with an amazing soundtrack.
Absolutely, and criminally underrated.
Yeah, it always baffles me that In the Mouth of Madness doesn't get all the love it deserves. That film's amazing.
I like criminally underrated, like the best non-Lovecraftian film you'll ever see.
I would actually go as far as to say it's the best Lovecraftian film out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's just shy. It's shy of just mentioning his name, isn't it?
Yeah.
And by the way, my favourite colour is blue.
I'm losing me.
Yes, I like it a lot. I like it a lot, yeah. Actually, we're getting some intermesh here with my own podcast. You know, there's a sort of strange Playgrounds feeling coming on here. I can't help it. It's like tendrils. It is very like chaos, actually. It's tendrils just reaching out and infesting all of your tiny little minds.
Dance to my strings. Pull the strings.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the only difference is I don't want Dominion. I don't want people like dancing to my strings. I don't want them dancing to any strings. I want anarchy. I want a kind of metaphysical chaos.
You want to see the entropic nature of the world being brought open and shown to everybody to play. Play
absolutely.
Within the guts of entropy.
Within the strange playgrounds, absolutely.
Yes,
That's the whole metaphor right there, ladies and gents. We've just uncovered it and encapsulated it. There you go. That's what it's all about. On the wrong fucking podcast. Damn. And blast. And other Victorian curse words.
Oh, ragamuffin.
Absolutely. Dagnamit, etc.
I know that we're staying way off the beaten path here, and we will
like
get back
well off topic.
But I saw something the other day that I was actually meant to take a photo of to send you, and it was a Victorian walking stick.
Oh.
And I looked at it, and the first thought that went into my brain was, that is an orphan beating stick.
Oh, I like the fact that you thought of me.
Well, no, I saw it, and I was going to get my phone out, but I had no charge, so I couldn't take a photo of it. Because I was going to send you, because the thing was ornate. It was beautiful.
So it may potentially have had magical properties at some point.
If I'd had 30 quid, I probably would have bought it. I'm not going to lie. It was an amazing, beautiful thing.
Very, very nice indeed. By the way, ladies and gents, despite the implication, I've never beaten orphans.
No, but I do feel that you, much like Billy Edwards, would feel at home being a Victorian gentleman.
Oh, maybe. If I were, I'd be the kind of... I would be the Aleister Crowley type.
Yeah,
probably.
You would be the sort of the guy
counterculture, the counterculture guy.
Yeah, you I think would be the guy who held these really lavish parties that people went to, but no one ever spoke about.
Absolutely, yes.
Whilst I feel Billy Edwards would be owning a lot of big smoke belching factories and would walk around beating orphans around the face in the street.
Okay, so now we're getting into slander territory here, so that's really cool.
It's only slander if I'm saying it about him without his knowledge.
And if it's untrue.
Well, yeah, and if it's untrue. But I've been saying this for years about the man.
Oh, right, okay, fine.
I just feel that he's the friendliest Dickensian villain you've ever met.
Brilliant. Absolutely superb.
Well,
by the
Adam
way...
White, by the way, right? Adam White would be the type of guy who sat there staring over a desk, looking at you over steepled fingers, and he would say such things as, "And how will you solve this?"
So basically, in your head, like every contact and every guest they slot into a Dickensian place. Yeah,
pretty much like Millman, right? Andy Millman. He would be the head of the Thieves Guild. He'd be running around with his little Cockney accent. Yeah, well, his little Geordie accent, and it would be like, "Go and shitty yourself, one of us. Go and shitty yourself, one of the family."
I'm not even going. I'm not going to ask who.
Stu would walk in and be like, "Sorry, boss, we haven't managed to get all the money." And Stu would be like, "Oh, you little dick of snipes, whoa."
I'm not even going to ask who like Bill Sykes would be, or the Bill Sykes equivalent.
Who would Bill Sykes be from everyone we've had in? It wouldn't be Chris. Paul. It could be Logan Blaze. He can be Bill Sykes.
Okay, Paul.
Yeah.
Best Oliver Reed impression. Anyway. Yes, pulling down trousers on Parkinson and whatnot. Anyway, yes, Warhammer.
What's that what we're here for? Right, okay.
Apparently, yeah.
I thought we were doing a new podcast called Dickens About.
That's quite good, actually. I like that. I quite like that. Anyway,
you don't know about my Lord of the Rings one that was called Tolkien Shite.
That's pretty good too. I do like that.
I'm so tired.
Oh dear, that's quite good.
Right.
Anywho,
so
there are things. I mean, there are things going on out there, ladies and gents. There are actually like salient topics that we do need to discuss. But one of the first things I want to do, I would really love to do, is give a shout out to one of I suppose one of our contemporaries, although he's far bigger than us, at Kirioth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah.
Kirioth is absolutely superb. He's what I really do respect him for more than anything at this point. It's his equanimity.
Yes.
It's his equanimity. The last video the guy put up was very eloquent, very calm, very measured. Given the circumstances, far more than I would have been, or I'm going to be, in fact.
Yeah, the man. Now, I don't want to put words in his mouth, and I don't want to say anything out of turn, so I'm going to try and keep this as much to the facts as physically possible.
Absolutely, yes.
But the man put out a video about a topic that we're going to talk about quite soon, actually, the Warhammer Adventures comic.
Absolutely.
And within that, he said that he got very toxic messages, which imputed upon his own struggles with mental health.
Mm-hmm.
Which alone, before you even add anything else, is a purely disgusting thing to do, as far as I'm concerned.
Yes, rather common upon the tubes of you.
Yeah.
I'm sad to say, unfortunately. There is a particularly pervasive form of vermin on the tubes of you that seem to bloat on that kind of negativity, it seems.
And it's one of the things that pleases me about the Fluffenhammer YouTube is that so far there has been conversation and pleasantries.
Absolutely.
No
The
one's been a
Fluffenhammer
moron, which is lovely.
No. Fluffenhammer's great. There's no need of the banhammers around here.
No. I think I'm I'm going to bring the viewfinder back a little bit. Mm-hmm. One of the reasons that it angers me as much as it does when that type of thing happens is because for the last 10 years, a little bit more, I've worked in various forms of mental health. Mm-hmm. At the moment, my job mostly is working with the general public.
Yep.
So, whilst that might sound like it's not as difficult as some of the other jobs I've had in the past, it is something very, very difficult to do because you're dealing with people who have no knowledge of how the mental health services work and who have recently become diagnosed, or they have been diagnosed for years and they're struggling in just doing day-to-day stuff without any support, because there's a lot of people out there. When somebody starts using it as an insult or as a threat,
weapon,
they weaponize the idea of somebody's mental health. They're attacking not just that person, but every single person out there who has dealt with something. And by that, I don't just mean people who have been in services for 20, 30 years. You, the person doing the attack, might find yourself somewhere down the line in a position where you've got to come to me.
Well, given the fact that they are acting in this very particular and pernicious way, it kind of suggests that they almost certainly will be, doesn't it? At some point, it's kind of it's ironic in its own peculiar way, because the need to attack someone in this highly personal manner in such a vicious way, it does suggest a form of mental instability.
It does.
It suggests certainly an emotional lack of development.
Yeah, and when something happens to somebody and it is completely outside of their control, it's only 3 steps from where you could be. And I don't just mean you, George. I'm talking everybody listening. There is a
absolutely. I mean, it's not. It's not. It's actually, for me, it's not like a few steps. It's where I have been. Absolutely. Yeah. It's a subject that's very, very near and dear to my heart, because of my own mental health issues, which are profound. You know?
I completely. I understand entirely. I could wax lyrical for many, many hours over my entire, war with depression over the last 20-odd years. It doesn't take much. It's one wrong step which leads to 50 more steps,
absolutely.
Which leads to a very dark pit.
It's like a hairline fracture, isn't it?
Yeah.
It just goes, it starts to spread, and suddenly the whole edifice is coming down. It does not take a great deal. But yeah, I mean, on a just like a broader level, I think Kiriot's videos are very good.
Yes,
I think Kiriot's videos are very good, and I think his response to the what's it called again, Adam? This new... I'm having a day today. I really am. I'm having a difficulty with brain and words.
It's called, George, Warhammer Adventures!
Warhammer Adventures, yes. I mean, what I like about his response to it is it's something, again, that I've seen largely throughout the Fluffenhammer. A lot of people have responded in the same way, which is really positively. It's really positively. Or with a kind of shrug. It's like, well, it's not aimed at me. And so I'm not really that bothered about it.
Yeah.
On the other side, and inevitably, you have these very extreme negative reactions to it in terms of its style, its intended audience. There seems to be this anxiety, this sort of gatekeeping fear that somehow it's going to undermine the entirety of Games Workshop and of Warhammer and of AOS, and somehow it's going to dilute the fan base and the mythologies and the cultures, which it just isn't. I mean, it's a paranoia. It's a paranoid reaction, and it's bizarrely extreme. it's bizarrely extreme to me. There is a gatekeeping quality to it in terms of the language that's used that I really hate. The people who seem to be reacting most negatively seem to think that they own this franchise.
Yes.
Which they don't.
No, of course
Sorry.
they don't.
They own their little portion of of the hobby. They own their little engagement.
Mm-hmm.
They own the armies they've created. They own the background that they've come up with for their specific armies. But they do not own the actual license.
No.
They do not own the universes. They don't own the game system. They don't own the culture. It doesn't belong to them. It's a gatekeeping quality, a sort of old guard, get off my lawn quality that I must admit I loathe.
Funny you should say that, because if you go into the old Hammer communities, there's a load of positivity. There's very little in the way of the venom that you see in a lot of other places. As much as I hate to say it, it's not the old guard that's angry about it.
Yeah.
It's the middle area.
That sort of, that grey area.
Yeah. It's really odd, and I don't understand it. I think a lot of it is people who they've not yet had children, or they're not in the area where they're thinking about children. That seems to be where the venom comes from, because anybody who has kids has been like, yep, buying this for my kids.
Well, superb, yeah, absolutely.
Or, my kids aren't interested, but it's nice to see. So
it's nice to see. This is the thing. I mean, this is what they don't seem to understand. It's a way of bringing in new demographics to this universe. And don't get me wrong, it may not be any good.
No,
it may not work,
fail.
but it may fail miserably, but then again, it may be excellent.
Yeah.
They could actually make a franchise out of this, and it could work. It could appeal to new demographics, which these universes need to survive.
Yes, we need to have people coming in.
It can't just be us. It can't just be those of us who were born in the 1980s and the early 1990s, because we're gonna fade. We're gonna go away eventually. You know, we may fall out of the hobby. We may not have the money to spend on it. We may die or whatever.
I quite like how that escalated.
Yeah. It needs new blood, and it needs new demographics, and that's not a bad thing.
No,
that's not a bad thing at all. I mean, on the really extreme end, you've got, and it's something I kind of hesitate to get into, but you have these very, I hate to say it, but these very sad and lonely individuals who are very sort of they seem to think that it's bound up with some sort of move towards political correctness, or they use the buzz terms of SJW and whatnot, as though broadening the demographics that are in this hobby is a bad thing.
Yes, because aiming things at children is SJW. Yeah.
I know, absolutely. And also, it's toys.
Yeah.
I would argue it belongs more to children and kids and young people than it does to us.
Mm-hmm.
I would argue that, because ultimately it's a game. It's toys.
Yeah.
It's not something that you need to protect. I mean, for one thing, the whole schema that's built up in their minds that somehow it's indicative of a decay or a pollution of the universes is entirely contrary to how the universes themselves are occurring. Mm-hmm. If anything, they're getting deeper and darker and nastier. They're getting more adult oriented. Whereas this, creating this little sort of pocket plane, I suppose, where people can come and engage with it on a particular level and then branch out into the wider stuff, is a very clever idea. It makes it less exclusive. It just opens gates for people.
Mm-hmm.
That's all it does. That's all it's doing. And it worked in the 1980s and 1990s with Hero Quest and Space Crusade.
Well, this is where I was going to aim for. I came into this hobby via kids' games.
Yep, likewise.
You start off down the line with the Dungeons & Dragons cartoon, and then that eventually puts you into Hero Quest, then Hero Quest puts you into Warhammer.
Absolutely, yeah. That's a really good way of looking at it, actually. I never thought of that. But yeah, Dungeons & Dragons, the cartoon, was my first experience of this stuff too.
Yeah. Why get angry about something that's only going to be good for the hobby? Games Workshop themselves have said multiple times that this is not going to be taking anything out of Black Library. It's not removing anything from the Black Library release schedule.
Clearly not.
This is its own thing. It is here. It's got its own team involved. Badoom. But here's another thought for you. And this is one I was thinking about last night when I was at work.
Mm-hmm.
So this comes out. Warhammer Adventures comes out, and it does well for itself.
Yep.
Right? So Games Workshop's just proven that it can exist on another media.
Yeah.
Okay? So you look at this, you've got Games Workshop, the computer games, Games Workshop, the young adult, well, not the young adults, the adults fiction. Then you've got Games Workshop, the children's fiction, and then of course you've got the board games, and then you've got the war games. So that's 5 different tentacles of the octopus, right?
Yep.
Can you not see where they're going with this? Can you not see what the point of it is? They are trying different things in order to cement their IPs, to cement their franchise, to make it something that is sustainable.
Absolutely. They're capitalizing on their success, aren't they? Their recent success. They're capitalizing on it, and they're doing exactly the right thing.
Yes.
And I mean exactly the right thing. They're diversifying. They're not sitting there stolidly like a lot of companies have done and have died as a result.
Like Games Workshop did for 10 years.
Absolutely. I mean, quite frankly, we're lucky there's still a Games Workshop. We're very lucky because they were in the toilet, like financially and in almost every conceivable way. But they've clawed their way back, and it's by doing different things. But I mean, for God's sake, they destroyed the entirety of the old world. You know, that was a way bigger move than this.
Yeah, of course it was.
Way bigger.
And of course, people whined about that as well.
They did.
Although I can get a little bit more behind that because I still to this day miss the old world.
Yeah, I understand. I understand missing it, but it was done.
Yes, completely. It was dead.
It was so done. I mean, I was so bored of the old world at that point. I was so bored of it. And the End Times, I collected those. Like, I've got all of those books, you know, all of those big collections because they were interesting. Stuff was happening. Stuff happened. And AOS, what I love about AOS is that it is dynamic. It is constantly moving. Every time there's a new book, every time there's a new campaign, it's changing all the time. So initially it was the Age of Chaos, then Sigmar came about and swept that away, then you had Nagash, now you've got something else happening, you know, there's something else stirring in the depths. It's going to probably change the dynamic again. It's so cool. That's the way it should be. It's an ongoing narrative. And this is symptomatic of that exact, that new philosophy that they seem to have. This new way of approaching their IPs, which is to make them interesting, not just like monolithic, you know?
Yeah.
They're not just stolidly sat there like great decaying temples whilst bleeding worshippers, you know?
It's obvious to me, and I might be wrong here, so feel free to call me a fool for this, but in this thought process I had of this is where they're aiming, they want a movie.
That would be interesting.
You know, at some point, this is what they're trying to do. This is where they're aiming for. And let's forget about Ultramarine.
It's an interesting prospect. It's something that I'm surprised hasn't already happened, to be honest, because it's an obvious thing. I mean, the universes are so cinematic. You can imagine how certainly in like the current day mainstream ethos of popular cinema, with the superhero films and you know stuff like that, riding on the tailcoats of like the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit and all that stuff. Yeah. It's an obvious thing to do. They if they're done well, they would go down very well indeed. The problem is doing it right.
Yeah, very much so.
That's tricky. I mean, it's stuff like one of the considerations would be like, say if they did like a series of films based on, I don't know, the Horus Heresy or something like that. The language is used, because do they do what Tolkien did, and do they like risk alienating people by having it in like a form of Imperial Gothic, like a Cod Latin?
I think,
or do they go for like High English or something?
English would be the way to go. I think mostly the biggest. So if you look at the Warcraft movie, right? The Warcraft movie, it's got 20 years of background to draw upon. It had, I can't remember the guy's name, David Bowie's son directing. Oh, right, okay. You know, the guy who did Moon. Which, by the way, if you haven't seen Moon, go see Moon. Moon is amazing.
Good film, yeah.
Brilliant film. And yet, it failed. Because it had a huge budget, and to be honest with you, I've always said it needed to be an entirely CGI film.
Yeah.
Because the only stuff in that film that was worth anything was the orcs.
Yeah.
And the orcs in Warcraft are amazing. Seriously, the humans are really boring in that film. The orcs, fascinating, absolutely fascinating. They show more emotion than the humans do. It's really weird. But still, that film failed.
Yeah.
You can't just throw yourself into it because...
No, I mean, one of the big things, I think, certainly with Warcraft, was when it came out. It was kind of riding the coattails of The Lord of the Rings, as a lot of films were at that time, and the problem with them is they're all compared to The Lord of the Rings, and they're never as good,
enough, It was riding the coattails of The Hobbit.
Oh, that's even worse then.
Yeah.
That's kind of even worse.
World of Warcraft, the game, when that came out, that was riding on the coattails of Lord of the Rings, because Lord of the Rings isn't that far away from being 20 years old at this point.
God almighty, that's distressing.
Yeah. 2001, wasn't it? 2001, 2002, 2003.
Yeah, I think it was. That's distressing, isn't it?
We're almost at, we're halfway through 2018.
God almighty, that's really frightening. Really frightening. I remember going to see those films for the first time.
Oh, yeah.
Callow, 19-year-old.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the thing you would remember, that the Lord of the Rings entire push has been and gone and had a resurgence.
Yeah, God almighty.
So nothing's
frightening.
Nothing's riding the coattails. So you'd have thought that something would have happened around about that time, but it didn't. Mostly because trying to get a film off the ground when you're a British IP wargaming company is entirely impossible. It's like Hordes, the War Machine guys, and the Project Press, that's the one. They've been looking around for years now as a way of trying to get something out there, some form of media, and it's just not been doable.
It's difficult, isn't it? Because it's not like, say, they're both one of those franchises where you need a big budget.
Oh yeah, you need huge.
It cannot be small budget. It's not like, say, if you were trying to do, for example, something based on like a sort of Call of Cthulhu style thing, you could do it. You could do it with a small budget, but these franchises, not a chance. Not a chance. I mean, just the Space Marines themselves. Mm-hmm. They'd have to be CG because they're massive. Outside of their armor, they're enormous and disproportionate to human beings.
Yes, yeah.
So there's no other way of doing it. Then you throw in the alien races, things like the orcs and the Tyranids and whatever. It's just not possible.
Well, what you do is you make an Imperial Guard film.
Now that you could do. That you could do with it would require some very deft writing, some very deft sort of direction, but you could do it. If you made it like, say, Imperial Guards versus something like Gene Stealer cults, you could possibly get away with, and Chaos cults you could potentially get away with. You could do it.
Well,
you could do it.
Look at Dread, right?
I know, stunning film.
Yeah, an astonishingly good film, and it always upsets me that film didn't do well.
Yeah, I know. Knocks me on my ass, that film did.
Yeah.
I was absolutely amazed at how good it was.
And it infuriates me that apparently there was the basic ideas for the next 2 films in the franchise ready to go.
And you know what? Then you measure it against the fact that the 1990s one with Sylvester Stallone that didn't understand a fucking thing about the franchise did quite well, and it's still, it's still kind of like a cult classic. It's like, fuck off.
Yeah.
He takes his helmet off.
Do you want to know something really sickening?
What's
that?
The
third film in the franchise would have been Necropolis.
Oh, fuck off. Like one of the best arcs in the entirety of Judge Dredd.
Yep.
And that would have been adult.
Oh yeah. God,
that would have taken the franchise directly down horror, just straight into horror territory.
Oh, well.
So the Dark Judges, you'd have seen the Dark Judges, you'd have seen Mortis and Fear and Fire and Death. That would have been fantastic.
Makes me sad. But anyhow, we've got way off the beaten path.
Anyway.
So yeah, that's the point. That's what Games Workshop are trying to do. They're trying to throw themselves at as many mediums as possible. The Black Library does a hell of a good turnover. I don't think people realise just how big Black Library is in this day and age.
Well,
and you yourself know this.
I know very well.
the getting a book published, and I'm talking actually published through proper channels, it's not like it used to be. It's an entirely different beast now.
It's very difficult. It's very difficult, and publishing houses, I mean, just big publishing houses generally just don't do very well in this market. They just don't. It's why they churn out stuff like Twilight and like 50 Shades of Grey and whatnot, because those things do well. They sell. But to have a publishing house that is as consistently popular as the Black Library is and that gets these sales is astonishing.
Yeah.
It's astonishing. And it's one of those publishing houses where if you can break into it, you'll do well.
Yeah, you're set for life.
You'll do well.
So that, yeah.
I know, I've been trying. A lot.
So basically, to draw a line under this, why be angry at something that will bring more people to the franchise that you love, and thus put more money into it, and thus sustain it and cement it for the future?
It does seem to be a very self-defeating thing, doesn't it? It does seem to be a cutting off one's nose to spite one's face situation. It really does. Very short-sighted, very reactionary. It's this sort of... It's the same reaction, ironically, that you see in a lot of things at the moment. You see it whenever there's like a new adaptation of a 1980s cartoon or comic book and people don't like the art style or whatever. You see it there.
Well, it's
and
weird.
I must admit, it's unseemly. To me, just on a visceral level, I just find it unseemly for like 30-odd-year-old guys to be wailing and gnashing their teeth over this stuff. I find it infantile.
What I found really interesting was that came out the same day that the new Thundercats cartoon hit.
Yeah.
And oh my word, my Facebook feed was just full of misery.
Honestly, there have been... to the Thundercats thing, certainly, there were some things where I was like... I'm going to block you because I don't like... I think the way you're responding to this is infantile, you know? It's ridiculous.
I actually came off Facebook for about 24 hours just because I wasn't dealing with it.
Now, don't get me wrong. I don't really like the look of the new Thundercats per se. Nope. It doesn't appeal to me. But it's... You know what? I'm not a 6-year-old. Nope. That's the point. It's like... And don't get me wrong, I love cartoons. I don't have any problem with adults liking cartoons at all. I fucking love them. I think they're a brilliant medium. I really, really adore cartoons. Adventure Time, I think, is stunning. I love the new DuckTales. The new DuckTales is absolutely fucking spectacular. Kicks the crap out of the 1980s one, I can tell you that. It really does. I like the 1980s one too, but the new one is just way better, like on a fundamental level. And I don't mean on a subjective level in that I enjoy it more. I mean in the sense that it's better made, it's better written, the animation is better, the style is better, the voice acting is better, the characters are just better written. It is a better product, you know. But yeah, and also people tend to forget they have these rose-tinted views of things they experienced in their childhood. Have you actually gone back and watched the original Thundercats? And I mean really watched it. It's not very good.
What are you talking about? It's got some of the finest voice acting I've ever heard.
Exactly. You know what people remember? People remember two things. They remember the theme tune, which is excellent, and they remember the transformation sequences with Mum-Ra, which are excellent. Everything else, pretty damn bad. It has to be said, pretty damn bad. The stories are all stock for 1980s cartoons of this era. They're all stock.
Save one.
The voice... there are exceptions. There are a couple of exceptions. Some of them are pretty good. I like the opening, Exodus.
Yeah.
That's pretty damn good with the destruction of Thundera and whatnot. There's a couple of episodes that are okay.
There is one episode, and it's the one with Groon the Destroyer.
I like that one too.
Because that thing is... You can tell that J. Michael Straczynski wrote it. That thing starts off as a horror episode and then ends up being the gods they battle.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
And
that's a pretty good episode.
If the series had been like that, it would have been astonishingly good. But it isn't.
But it's not.
No, it's not.
It's just not. It's goofy. Yeah. I mean, it's goofy. Some of the story arcs are ridiculous. And so, and people tend to forget this.
Yes.
Because they experienced this as a child and they have this impression of it. And don't get me wrong, I don't think there's anything wrong with you enjoying those cartoons. I enjoy them. I enjoy watching them, even though they're bad, you know? Because I have a connection to them, because I watched them when I was a child. but they were not as good as you remember them, and they're certainly not better than a lot of the cartoons that are being put out now.
No.
Certainly not. Because, the raw fact of the matter is they were designed to sell toys.
Yes.
They weren't really designed to tell a story.
No.
They were designed to sell you plastic.
Yeah.
That's what they're for.
And they did that job brilliantly. Right,
They did it really well.
Shall we draw a line under this then and get moving?
Shall we?
Because there are some other things we want to talk about.
Absolutely. And we don't want to be too negative. I mean, on a positive note, my response to this, fantastic. I'm very pleased. Yeah. I'm very pleased that Games Workshop have the will to do this. They have the will to actually put this stuff out there and experiment a little bit. And if this fails, fine, it fails. Maybe they can do something else. Maybe they can put out like a Hero Quest style thing or something,
Well, you know what this is. Warhammer Adventures is going to end up being a board game. If this succeeds, they'll make a board game out of it.
Yeah, and it will probably be like Hero Quest, and Space Crusade,
I mean, I'm looking forward to buying these for my godkids.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
I'm just, I'm fascinated. I am interested to see how it goes, and I wish them all the success.
Same.
I hope it works. I sincerely hope it works.
So, from a something for children that really upset the adults, let's go to something for adults that'll really upset the children.
Oh, unless you're a child like me, of course. Wow. I mean, we've talked about this on this show before. This is something that's a consistent theme throughout the Fluffenhammer, because it's something that's been consistent really since the death of the old world and since the coming of 8th edition 40k. And that's my own patron deity, Slaanesh. The great the great enemy, she who thirsts.
Yep.
She who thirsts. She's definitely coming. I mean, it was up in the air, really, up until recently, as to what they were doing with Slaanesh and whether she would be as prominent as she was before. Not anymore. I think it's very clear from, first of all, the hosts of Slaanesh were the first faction focus.
Yep.
For the new and up and coming AOS, which is interesting, isn't it?
It is.
That's very peculiar.
I wonder why.
I wonder why that could be. I've no idea. That in conjunction with the Slaaneshi Claw that was revealed recently as one of their rumor engines. Yeah, I wonder why that could be. There's a whole new summoning dynamic, apparently, that's related exclusively to how Slaanesh demons and champions operate on the battlefield, which is really cool. It's whenever they deal wounds or receive wounds. It's not killing, because killing is obviously core.
Yeah.
That's cornate. It's wounding. It's causing and experiencing pain. So any wound that they inflict that doesn't kill an enemy, and any wound they receive that doesn't kill them, gives them a summoning point. And they can use that to summon Slaaneshi demons. That's really cool. That's a very clever little summoning dynamic outside the obvious spells that you can cast and whatnot.
Very clever little summoning dynamic. So well with what Slaanesh is and what the Slaanesh demons are.
Absolutely, and it shows you how you can introduce variety into a stock dynamic, or into a stock rule. It's very clever, but it's what it implies, all of this, that I find most interesting. They've been dropping little tidbits in that article. There's this naughty little thing where they talk about how, I wonder what will happen when he breaks free. It's like, it's coming. Slaanesh is going to erupt into the realms. Like, I think it's going to be cataclysmic. I really do. There's a gorgeous bit of artwork that they released to promote the new edition of AOS, and it's actually a depiction of Slaanesh. You actually see what Slaanesh is at the moment, in its chained state, and how it's being chained, how the mechanism works, and it's very cool. It's very cool. You don't see any detail. Slaanesh is like an amorphous entity. It's an abstract entity. It's like you see the outline of it, and it's very difficult to make out. Very difficult to make out exactly what it looks like, but it's immense. It's like it's bigger than any entity in the realms. It's like a realm in and of itself. It's enormous.
Yeah.
Absolutely enormous.
The thing about that bit of artwork that really got me is you can hear everything I was looking at it, and you can hear the rattling and the creaking of the chains, the hum and the hiss of the pylons, the bellowing and the screaming of Slaanesh as she tries to get free. It's such a beautiful bit of work.
I think what I love again is what it suggests. What it suggests is that this is going to be an overarching narrative, or at least an introduction narrative for the second edition, the rebirth of Slaanesh. Now, how that's going to manifest, I don't know. I've no idea. I mean, there are multiple theories out there. One of them I was reading, which is really interesting, is that they could shatter Slaanesh, you know? Mm-hmm. So maybe she breaks herself when she frees herself, and you get shards of Slaanesh scattered throughout the realms, which become avatars of Slaanesh.
Oh, that would be cool.
Which means there could be a model.
Mm-hmm.
A model that reflects what Slaanesh is. You know, an avatar of Slaanesh. That would be fabulous. And there's no reason for that not to happen. I mean, we know this can happen to the Chaos Powers. It happened to Zeech.
It did, yeah.
It happened to Zeech in one of the story. It's the background for the Blue Scribes, isn't it? In one of the stories, Zeech. There was an era when Zeech was preeminent over all the other gods, and they toppled him. They actually shattered him into fragments, which became magic in the mortal realms. That's why there is magic in the mortal realms. And eventually he managed to pull himself back together, and that's what he's doing. He's regathering the shards of himself. It's why the Blue Scribes fly around gathering spells and whatnot. Mm-hmm. They're trying to gather together the bits and pieces of Zeech to restore him to his previous state. There's no reason why that couldn't happen to Slaanesh. No. I'd be quite up for that, to be honest. I'd be quite up for that. On the other hand, maybe he'll break free in his entirety.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be interesting. Maybe what will happen, and this is the one I sincerely hope happens. I hope that when Slaanesh breaks free, it changes the power dynamic of the pantheon of chaos and of the sort of divine cycles of the realms. Because at the moment it's Nagash.
Yes.
Nagash is preeminent, so it's Thanatos, essentially. Mm-hmm. It's what we talked about earlier. It's this whole Thanatos and Eros dynamic, which is, it seems to me, what they're going for.
Yeah, it is. Everything is getting put together as the most. It feels legendary. It feels mythical. Yeah. Whilst there is a part of me that misses things like Skarsnik and the little heroes and villains of the old world, the part of me that adores mythology is screaming like a fanboy. Over the stuff that I have loved for so long being transformed and turned into this giant, rolling, mythological creature that's just crushing everything in its path.
Yeah, it's something that AOS does very well, actually. It's
what it's built to do. It's built to be myth. It's built to be legendary battles where, whilst every single model on the battlefield is an important part of your structure for the better and bigger narrative, you are doing everything to appease the gods.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just expanded the metaphysics hugely. Like, when the old world was the old world, there really was only one metaphysics, to be perfectly honest, and that was chaos. Yes. It was the warp. All gods were just adjuncts to them. Yes. It's just not true anymore. It's not true anymore. You now have pantheons, different pantheons of gods, all of whom operate according to their own metaphysical rules, which I love. And an even bigger metaphysics than that. There is a wider metaphysics that they can broach upon with regards to the star dragons and the great beasts and whatnot. It's very, very cool. The potential for storytelling and for mythology building is huge. And it seems to me with Slaanesh, what's going to happen is another twist of that dial. So what I hope happens is, first of all, Slaanesh ascends back to the Pantheon and just maybe kicks off the Horned Rat a little bit, you know? Stamps it down a little bit. I think that may happen.
I think you're probably right there, but on the other hand, no. However,
he won't go away.
However,
I mean, the Horned Rat won't go away. He'll still be knocking about.
To be honest, he's done nothing in the time he's been there. However, here's a thought. Slaanesh returns to the Pantheon, kicks the Horned Rat off his throne and says, "No, away with you." The Horned Rat then returns to his burrows between reality.
Yep.
The Skaven, when they reappear, then come back as something wholly new. Because I think this is the idea. I think this is the plan. I think that Slaanesh returns to the four gods, so they are the four chaos gods as they are, as they should be.
As they were, always and forever.
And I think that means that the Horned Rat returns to his people, and they, when they make a reappearance, they reappear as something entirely new.
Something more AOS.
Yes.
Yeah? I think that's a great idea. And I think the pattern they should follow is they should look to the Vermin Lord figures.
Well, if you read between the lines on a lot of what the Skaven have been doing, stuff like, I mean, granted, the Pestilence was the one that got, it's the only Skaven force that's been fired out there. And to be honest with you, that battle tome isn't great.
No, it was a bit half-arsed, that release, wasn't it?
Where they were trying to fire out a few to start with, just so there was stuff out there. I don't begrudge them that. It's just one of those things. It's like the Seraphon one. It's not.
Yeah.
It's the missteps.
It's a bit more of a holdover from the old game, isn't it, really?
Yeah. Well, which is what AOS 2.0 is going to do. AOS 2.2 is the sweeping change that cuts off all ties to the old world. It's gone now. It's official, done. Which is fine. Done. Okay, brilliant. Not a problem. So,
not at all.
What I think you're going to see is a lot more in line with how the Skaven have been within the background. Stuff. I mean, do you know about the Parasite engines?
The Parasite engines? No, don't know that.
The Parasite engines are giant walking burrow cities.
Oh, wow.
They are equal part burrow, they are equal part mining operation, and they are equal part weapon. Right?
Right.
So what these things do is they wander around, I think there's 3 in the realm of life, and they just drill out all of the goodness, all of the vitality of the area. Some of them are in Nurgle's areas in the realm of life, just sucking out all of the pestilence and
right,
ooze,
that's interesting.
whilst other ones are like digging down for Realmstone and Warpstone. Now, you don't ever no one ever says what these things are doing, but there's one picture of it, and it is a giant clanking industrial nightmare. And if that is what they're going to do with the Skaven, that they become a lot more industrial.
Yeah, that could be very cool.
Well, my favourite clan has always been Skiri, or Skya as it used to be.
Yes.
And the idea that maybe the entirety of the Skaven become that. So things like Clan Mulder's Stormfiends become more, they mutate a creature so they can attach more weapons to it.
Yeah.
That if they're going to go down that route with the Horned Rat, I would be really happy.
And I like the way they've subtly suggested what the mythological place of the Skaven will be, which is as this force that undermines everything.
They are entropy.
They're entropy. Yeah, they corrupt and undermine everything, and they don't have any wider goal.
No.
It is literally just to undermine and undo the realms, almost mindlessly. They don't even think while they're doing it. That's just their nature. It's what they're for.
What seems to be pushing the Skaven in, I know we've gone way off the beaten track again, but what appears to be pushing the Skaven in AOS, and once again, this is just reading between the lines of everything, is they've taken that entire idea from Fantasy Battle, pardon me, they've taken the idea of from Warhammer Fantasy Battle that they exist to gnaw upon the entrails of other races, right? And they've pushed it. They've pushed it to the point where their plan is to create the downfall of every other race. Not for them.
Yeah, I like that.
Not for them to ascend above them.
Nope.
But it's almost like a race that's got species-wide jealousy of what everybody else has, so they want it.
Yeah.
They want it.
It's almost like a nihilism.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, very much so. They don't know what they'll do when they get it. There's no plans for the future. It's just, but I want it.
It's to undermine, isn't it? And that's it, to corrupt and distort. That's all they really want. Yeah. And they don't even know why. There's no wider philosophy. That's very cool.
There's a bit in the Malign Importance. I can't remember it off the top of my head entirely. I'm just looking to see if the book is within reach. No, it's on the other side of the room. Bugger. There's a bit in the Malign Importance, and I did it for the channel in the Gods Take Note video, where the Horned Rat just goes, "What? Something's rising. Something is new and different. No matter. I'll wait for them to kill each other then I'll step in, and the glory that is me shall come forth. And there is no point where there's a long-term plan. I'll let them fight, see what happens next, and I'm just going to watch. Because that's all the Skaven have been doing.
Yeah. Yeah, that is. They've been underground, basically, haven't they? You know, what I like about them, too, is the fact that they're everywhere.
Yes.
They're not tied to one realm or magisteria. They can crop up anywhere.
Well, do you know about the how Skaven Blight works in the mortal realms?
Not really,
right.
No.
Skaven Blight, they tried to gnaw through reality so they could get from realm to realm without using realm gates.
Right. That's clever.
Unfortunately, it didn't work, and Skaven Blight it sank.
Oh.
So Skaven Blight is half in reality, half in the immaterium.
Okay, that's fascinating. So I'd assume there are demons knocking about.
Yeah, you'd assume so. But apparently, it's, as I say, there is no real fiction anything on it, or no one...
Oh, that needs expanding.
It really does. It's one of those things I'm desperate for it to hit.
That really needs expanding. I'd be very interested to see what's going on there.
But knowing what I know about other things, like the goblins are getting... Sorry, the grots, they're getting a complete overhaul somewhere down the line. I don't think that's... saying anything that people don't already know.
I was going to say, I don't know, of course that's going to happen. Yeah. That's very cool as well, and to, remove them from the orcs as well, or the Uruks or whatever.
Yeah, well, they're sort of, they're going more piratical, apparently, which is...
Very cool!
Which is quite nice.
That's great.
Makes me happy.
Yeah.
So the Skaven I really want to see come back as being clanking industrial nightmares. I want them to be just nothing but filth and slime and encrusted metal.
Yeah.
You know, in the same way that they did to the Kharadron Overlord, the same thing they did to
absolutely.
the Ideneth, they took a base idea and they ran with it, and I am so...
That's what they need, isn't it? That's what they need. To remove them from their old aesthetic, they need a cohering factor, an aesthetic that works for them. That's all they need.
I want to see something that isn't just horde upon clan rats. I want to see just crazy, maddening things all over the place, like... Yeah. I don't know, like your average clan rat is actually now just a brain in some kind of robot body or something. Go Necron with them, something fun, something really different,
something interesting. Yeah, something that removes them from what they used to be.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean this is what's happening. It seems there are these big shifts in the metaphysics occurring, which I'm really pleased with. And of course, for me, there's a personal thing in that Slaanesh is my favourite of the gods, and is, the one I pray to nightly.
Yeah, we did actually have a conversation the other day over the messenger of if Slaanesh is the only chaos god that you would worship if she was real.
Absolutely. If I materialised in the realms or in some place in the 40k universe, then that is where I would immediately turn.
What you're saying is that we need to do a young adult version of Warhammer Adventures, which is George's continuing adventures in the old world.
I don't think that would be a good thing at all. Not for a young adult market. Definitely not. That would be very bad indeed. Very distressing.
Yeah,
I'd imagine.
Getting on a roller coaster and I'm trying to think of an existing theme park that still exists. Obviously, an existing theme park that still exists. There's no point.
An existing theme park that still exists.
Yeah, there you go.
I like that.
Double positive.
I like
double
that.
Positive.
Fantastic tautology going on there.
Here's the story. Here's the pitch. So George and two other people, you may pick who those two other people are, you, during a drunken, rum-filled night, decide to break into Camelot.
Okay.
Into the theme park Camelot. In doing so, you accidentally set off a chain of events that means that whilst going through the Dragon's Eye, you accidentally get transported to the mortal realms.
So Dungeons and Dragons, essentially.
Pretty much,
yeah?
pretty much. But
pretty much.
Let's just file those serial numbers right off. What do you mean?
Yeah.
This is a whole new idea. And this is the new CBBC series, George's Continuing Misadventures in the
realms. Yeah. Yeah, that would not be suitable at all.
For some reason, you've decided to dress like Shao Kahn.
Yeah, why not? Why not? But yeah, I mean, what this suggests, obviously we're going to get an army book. Obviously, the hosts of Slaanesh, or whatever they're going to call them, are going to get an army book with attendant miniatures.
Mm-hmm.
With attendant miniatures. I am fascinated to see that manifest. I'm fascinated to see where they go. With the Force as a whole, like aesthetically, and in terms of what Slaanesh is going to be doing now.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I think what we're going to see is... obvious. Yeah, we're going to see Greater Demon. That thing is coming.
Yes.
That has been
clearly.
That's been confirmed now, I think.
Oh yes, there have been a number. There are a number of people out there who claim to have seen it. You know.
What I think might be an interesting little one to throw out there is just to say, so George, the rumor mill's got something else out there, Slaaneshi, that you might.
So I understand.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to go into what it is, but I think I think we'll just sit there and go, "Hey George, how you feeling right now, buddy?"
Oh,
hey, buddy.
God.
Hey, how you doing? You all right there over there, man?
Well,
you all right?
I'm fine. Requiring a sedative, I think. In need of some sort of sedative, I think, at the moment, because, I know what he's talking about, ladies and gents. It has ramifications for the other game system.
It does. It really does.
Because, of course, if there's going to be a Hosts of Slaanesh book for AOS and an attendant miniatures release, then obviously there's going to be an equivalent release in 40k. And that's going to be very fun.
Yeah.
That's going to be very fun indeed, because, you know, they tend to go a bit nastier in 40k with Slaanesh, and with all of them, actually, with all of the Chaos powers, because 40k does have a slightly more sort of dark and dismal and adult edge to it. It really does. Like, if you read the Nurgle books, for example, the Maggotkin of Nurgle in AOS is brilliantly graphic and unpleasant, but it has this sort of jolliness to it.
Yes.
You know, it has this japesy quality to it. The Death Guard book in 40k has elements of that, but by and large is very dark and dour. You know, it's about the misery and the darkness and the filth and the despair of it all. With what will be the Emperor's Children book, I imagine they're going to go to some places with that. I imagine, well, they're not going to have any choice. If they do what they did with the Thousand Sons and with the Death Guard, it's going to be elaborated beyond anything we've ever known before. There's going to be descriptions of acts and of rites and of cults that just defy any morality and any description. But it's interesting, isn't it? I wonder if it's going to be more like... Because this is, I imagine, is going to be more akin to the Death Guard release, in the sense that... Because we don't have any of the miniatures for this one.
No, we don't.
So, new Noise Marines, I think, are very likely.
Yep.
Well, they're certain. I mean,
I think the majority of the
dead
Slaanesh Marines are going to get an overhaul, in the same way that Nurgle did.
Yes, but what new stuff are they going to introduce? Because, of course, the Death Guard had loads of new stuff.
They did, actually, yes.
They had, like, their new characters and whatnot. So are we going to see, like, the equivalent of an apothecary for Slaanesh that, like, synthesizes toxins and chemicals from their opponent's blood and excretions and whatnot? Are we going to see, like, pleasure priests or something like that?
I want to see an experience engine.
Oh, that'd be so cool.
And it just walks around grabbing people, putting them into itself for 30 seconds, then throwing them out, and they're just like a spasmodic twitching wreck.
Yeah, that would be fantastic, wouldn't it? It sort of like feeds off of the sensation it elicits.
Yeah.
So it gets more powerful the more of them it takes in. Yeah, I like that. I really, really like that. I think that's a great idea.
This is why Games Workshop should hire me.
Yes, and it's going to be fascinating. It's going to be fascinating to see why they go with them. One thing I think they will do, combat drugs.
Yeah, without a doubt.
There'll be lots of drugs flying around, lots of cocaine, I think. Cocaine for Doom Rider.
Don't stop. This is Harpy country.
I wonder, will they bring him back? I mean, Lucius will be in it. I'll definitely. There may be a new Lucius the Eternal.
I want to see Doom Rider turn back up. That would be so much fun.
Will there be a new Doom Rider? I know people kind of don't like him, but he has gathered something of a fan base on the internet.
In the same way that we saw Sly Marbo, I think, and Slambo, I think that's where we'll see Doom Rider. He'll turn up as like a resin limited edition kit.
Sort of like a joke. Yeah. Kind of like a joke. Yeah, that'd be kind of fun. I'd go for that. Clouds of cocaine around him, obviously. You need to bring talcum powder to play him, legitimately.
I've actually spent part of this week working out how to make a realistic-looking smoke for a cigar for a goblin that I've got. I think I can make streams of cocaine at this point.
Yep.
The plan in order.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be fascinating to me. What do they do? Will there be a new Lucius the Eternal model? Given that we got a new Araman, we got a new Typhus, we got a new Khan. Yeah, probably.
Yeah, I think that. Probably. I think that's a dead cert.
Will Fabius Bile be in it?
I hope so.
I hope so too, but it's an interesting one because he is not technically part of that cult anymore.
No, that's true.
He does have, obviously, the Emperor's children were his original legion, and he still has a connection to them. A lot of it, if you read the wider fiction, a lot of his followers and a lot of his forces still comprise the Emperor's children. So there is definitely basis for including him in it.
Yeah.
But it's where it goes beyond that. I mean, the big one, Fulgrim.
Yes, yeah, I mean...
Next Primarch.
So that's a possibility.
Certainty. It's an absolute certainty. The only problem I can think of with that is that it's going to look very similar to Morathai.
That's true, actually. Yes, it'll be very serpentine, won't it?
Yeah, it's got lots of similar elements because, of course, Morathai's big beast form is derived from Slaanesh principles. So it has the wings, which Fulgrim has. It has the snake tail, which Fulgrim has. Yeah. Differentiating it is going to be interesting. Yeah. It's going to be an interesting exercise.
I hope there's more of a Hydra look, so it's not just one continuous trunk of snake.
Yeah.
That there's more like...
so like he splits somewhere down his length, and there's lots of tails, maybe.
Like tails forming and reforming, that type of thing.
I mean, the Morathai model gives me hope, because the thing about Fulgrim is he's meant to be beautiful.
Yes.
Like, just beyond angelic. It's supernaturally beautiful. Yeah. And that's difficult to capture.
Very much so, especially as beauty is so subjective.
So subjective, yeah. I mean, they've done very well with the Primarchs thus far. Magnus's arrogance, for example, is just typified in the model. Again, with Mortarion, you have the despair of the guy. Everything in the model is weighted. Have you noticed that?
Yes, yeah.
You know how Magnus is defiant? He's still reveling in his own power. It's almost like he could still break free from Zeish's clutches if he really wanted to. Mortarion is totally resigned. Everything about the model is heavy. It's all bleeding down.
Yeah.
It's all trailing down. Even his scythe. Even his scythe, depending on how you assemble it, but his scythe is held down. It's though he's weighting him. You get the impression that he just drifts across the battlefield, and every movement is slow and inevitable. He's resigned. He's totally resigned, and they've captured it beautifully in the model as a sort of dynamic opposite to Magnus. Which is great. So that's what they need to do with this one. It needs to have a sort of laconic quality to it, because although Fulgrim moves like lightning, he's actually not hurried.
No.
Everything is welcome to Fulgrim. Everything's a game. Everything is fun.
It's almost like you never see him make the movements, but he's always where you don't expect him to be.
Exactly, and he's always in motion. He's always sort of like, it's like every movement's like a dance.
Yes.
So maybe they've got to capture that quality about him as well, that he is impossibly elegant. Hypnotically elegant. You just look at him and you lose your mind. You lose all your will to his beauty,
It's going to be interesting to see what they do with him and how...
Well, that will be... He'll have lots of leadership effects.
Yes, the buffs.
That's one of the big things.
Amazing.
Yeah, he'll have he'll be able to buff the Emperor's Children units to ridiculous degrees, but he'll also be able to inflict negative modifiers to leadership on those around him. I imagine what there'll be is something like, you can't assault him, you can't charge him if you fail a leadership test or something like that, because you fall on your knees in gibbering adoration of him. Something like that.
Yeah.
And he'll always strike first as well.
Course.
He'll have a rule that will be like better than always strike first. It will be like the next notch up. It will be he always strikes first, and anyone who also has that rule strikes after him. You know,
it'll be something along the lines of he strikes first before the game even started.
Yes, Fulgrim is a preemptive strike. Yeah.
So
it'll be something like that.
Every time you
and
put a new unit down, it takes D3 wounds.
Yeah, just by looking at it. Yeah. And they enjoy it. Yeah, that's the other thing. They enjoy it. He'll also like how he like the other demon primarchs. He is a psyker. And I imagine his powers will be a mix of like, or rather like the Slaaneshi discipline will be a mix of sort of telepathic style powers. So they'll be subtle. There'll be things that they're almost like a hypnotic style powers, you know, that reach into the minds of their opponents and twist them or subvert them in some particular way. And also that they're going to be offensive powers that inflict horrendous sensation. Like storms of agony and bliss and pleasure.
So what you're saying there, George, is that when we meet up in October to go down to Nottingham to Warhammer World, we're going to have a Tzeentch versus Slaanesh battle. Is that what you're saying?
Probably.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. That's fine.
Probably. I think that's going to be fun. I mean, I will definitely be putting my Shattered Suns, my Thousand Suns equivalents on the back burner when this happens. Yeah. Because I won't be able to resist, unfortunately. I just won't be able to resist. Slaanesh forces epitomise everything for me. They've got the sort of fleshiness and weirdness of Nurgle, which I like, but also the beauty and elegance of a Tzeentch force, which I also like. Yeah. You know, it's those two things commingled together, and also the weirdness of a Tzeentch force, which I also really like. You can go anywhere with a Slaanesh force. You can go absolutely anywhere. Anywhere your twisted little imagination desires. I would advise a Clive Barkarian or HR Giga route myself.
Yeah, or you could go the other way entirely, just to really upset people, and go My Little Pony.
You could. I'm sure someone has done that. I'm sure if you looked on DeviantArt or somewhere like that, there would be pictures of Slaanesh My Little Ponies, or a sort of Fulgrim pony.
Yeah. There's no. I think that'll exist. That exists.
Oh, yeah. There is absolutely no doubt in my mind that exists.
That is
There's absolutely no.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I would lay money on it.
That actually might be the cover picture for this episode.
Oh God. Oh yes, that could be fun. That could be fun. But yes, so Slaanesh is coming, and I'd be very interested to see, again, dynamically what that means in 40k.
Yeah.
Because what that's going to mean is there's another Demon Primarch running around, and is its emergence going to be as cataclysmic as the others? Or is it going to be a bit different? Are they going to make it dynamically different? Is it going to be more subtle?
I think there'll be a lot more subtlety in this one.
I think so,
too. I think this is going to be something that will turn up. And it'll be, instead of another walking apocalypse, it's going to be something a lot more, and I'm here too.
Yes. Yes, because we know he is knocking about. He's been knocking about since the Gathering Storm, when he teases Guilliman from afar.
Yeah.
You know, he just sort of tempts him and sort of suggests that it doesn't matter what he does. He's already ensnared in Slaanesh's clutches. So that's cool. And there's going to definitely be a face-off against those two.
And I can't wait for that moment.
Because it was Fulgrim that put him in his stasis field, wasn't it? Who almost sliced his head off, you know?
There's so much more going on. This is the thing that we say every single episode. Please stop for just a few weeks.
Just a few seconds, because we also have, as well as although this feeds into it, we've been referencing it throughout, there's AOS 2.0 coming.
I think, just because of the time that we're on now, what we'll do is we'll leave AOS 2.0 till next time, because...
Okay, no worries, because that it's a big subject.
It is. It's a big subject, and I think we're going to have a bit more to talk about when we get to the next episode.
Oh, I've no doubt. No, I've no doubt something will have occurred.
Tum-ty-tum-ty-tum-ty-tum-ty-tum, saying nothing, but let's just hold on for a little bit.
Oh, good God.
So I think with all that being said, what we can take away from this episode is that A, Warhammer Adventures is good. even if you're not interested in it. And B, Slaanesh, whilst also good, isn't good for you.
Oh, it's terrible for you. It's like an addiction. Slaanesh worship is literally like an addiction. It's what it does to you. It eats you from the inside, but it's delightful. It's delightful while it happens. It's well worth it.
So I think with all that getting out of the way then, and our health warning being put out into the world.
Yes, this may be one of the not safe for work episodes, actually.
We didn't even get to, what was it we called it? Archeon the Ever-Chosen's Mean Bean Machine. Oh well.
No, we didn't even get to that. Although I think that may come up in the next episode.
So with all that being said then, George, where can people find you if they so wish?
They can find me at strangeplaygrounds.com, where they can find my fiction and my articles and all sorts of weird and wonderful stuff. They can find me on the YouTube channel Exaggerated Elegy, where they will find the Strange Playgrounds podcast, in which I witter on about horror and science fiction and all sorts of wonderful and deviant things. And you can find me over at Enigmatic Elegy on Twitter. Also, you can find my articles on the gingernutsofhorror.com and also in Dark Moon Digest, which is a periodical that I write for.
Awesome stuff. Where can you find me? Here. You can find me here. You can find me sleeping. You can find me underneath a rock, hissing at the light. You can find my work at rivetedsounds.co.uk. You can find... Well, actually, the rivetedsounds.co... rivetedsounds.co.uk also at the moment is putting out the complete Solomon Kane week by week.
Fabulous.
Episode 6, I think, should be out this week, which is the end of The Red Trail, which is the first Solomon Kane story.
Very cool
putting them
indeed.
out chapter by chapter. As the podcast, the Riveted Sounds podcast. Outside of that, where else can you find me? You can find me here, and that's really about it at the moment. I'm just currently working away on stuff in the background for both the Fluffenhammer, for Riveted Sounds, and of course for other stuff that I'm working on, which I can't talk about because I've had to sign a contract. Very annoying. That's annoying. Very annoying. Anyhow. But if you go to the Fluffenhammer YouTube, you will find a ton of short stories and in-universe looks at various different factions. This week I have recorded the entirety of the Seraphon series, so that'll be out next week. It'll take about 30 seconds.
Poor Seraphon.
And of course, you can find everything else, including articles, videos, and these shows at thefluffenhammer.weebly.com. And come and join us on the Facebook. The Fluffenhammer Facebook group continues to grow from strength to strength, and it is so nice to be in there.
It's a nice community. It really is. It's a very cool community. It's frictionless, isn't it? It's totally frictionless. There's no spiky edges, despite the Chaos Worshippers amongst us.
I actually just want to give a little bit of a shout out. There's a guy who's joined us, who is one of the most talented painters I've ever seen. I'm trying to remember his last name. It's Rob something. And my Facebook is not working. So he's an American fella, and the work he's been putting out has been absolutely astonishing.
Wow.
And he is just the nicest guy. I hate you. You're a lovely, lovely man. You've got absolutely no ego. He's so talented.
Brilliance. Absolute brilliance. Oh, yeah, you will see lots of lovely miniatures there too, by the way.
So with all that being said, let's get out of here then. Thank you so much, George, for your time this morning.
Absolute pleasure. And I mean absolute pleasure, because we were talking about Slaanesh.
And thank you very much to you at home. Bye-bye, y'all.
Bye-bye.